I found this Yaesu two-way radio at an electronics flea market. Though this radio is unlike any other ones I have seen in a long time. And it might even be illegal for you to use. Find out what this radio is and why. Let's get started. I'm not going to keep you in suspense too much. The radio in question is the FTA-310, and this radio is not your typical two-way, and certainly not the ones that you would expect to be used by radio amateurs. Well, sort of. You can listen, but you should never key down, with two exceptions. If you're a pilot, or your area has a designated frequency for reaching a pilot. If permitted in your country, and you are sure you can use that, though be certain. You may have guessed, this radio works on the airband, and we'll be looking at this unit in more detail shortly. The airband is designated from 108 to 137 MHz. That's used for aircraft navigation and voice communications. This falls just above the US FM radio band. Does not use FM, also known as frequency modulation though. In fact, it is AM, amplitude modulation mode. Unlike many other services you may monitor on scanners or encounter in the ham radio world, if you are a ham radio operator or amateur radio operator, if you will, these use AM. You would likely encounter FM mode above VHF and SSB most of the time when it comes to voice mode, also known as phone modes on the HF bands, with minor exceptions. And yes, there is AM used on the ham bands, and it sounds great when I hear it, but it's only a small fraction of modes used. The sound would be, of course, comparable to the AM radio bands. Let's take a closer look at this unit. Okay, let's go over the radio itself. Basically, what we got here is a very simple, typical Yaesu design radio, volume, channel, or VFO adjustments. You got the push to talk, which you should not be using unless you're authorized, and the monitor button underneath. Let's turn this on. And here we go. To adjust the squelch on this unit, function, and the SQ is squelch, turning this knob with the ring will allow you to block out noise and basically cut off levels of transmissions that are not strong enough for you to be understood, etc. Basically a typical squelch function. On the side you got the transmit button and the monitor button. Transmit button obviously you shouldn't be using unless you're licensed or authorized to be using it, such as a pilot. And this is the monitor button. The monitor button, looks like the clip just fell off. The monitor button basically just allows you to override the squelch in case there's something coming in and you want to listen to, or if you're tuning around. So basically just an override, it opens up the receiver completely. Those are the two buttons, power on the right. Here on the top, you got a detachable antenna, BNC style. Underneath this is where your headset goes if you're using it. For example, if you're a pilot, you would be plugging in a headset. You likely will not be using that if you're just playing around with it. Two knobs here, we already went over that. The light turns red. That basically means it's transmitting. So if this is red, you're transmitting and the mic's open. So don't do that. Let's go over these. The squelch function we have already talked about, so I'm not going to cover that again. Also, I'm not going to cover everything in detail since this is not a video intended for pilots. It's intended for listeners, people who are interested in just listening in to pilots at flight, etc. Now, the 121.5 button is the emergency frequency, and there's a direct button for that, as you can see on the top middle right. The rest of the buttons are pretty straightforward. Obviously, there is a numeric keypad. The actual numbers indicate the exact digits that you'll be entering. However, if you are using the function key, in conjunction with these keys, there's different features or functions that you enable. Yeah, and yes, I am using a still. This is to avoid you getting vertigo from movements on the camera, and it's easier to see the buttons. Now, if you're using the function key and key 1, it activates what's called a DVOR mode. And DVOR is a type of navigation aid for aircraft. It stands for Doppler VHF Omnidirectional Range. You don't really need to know this. Unless you're a pilot, of course, then you better know this. But for listening, you do not. Function 2 activates the to VOR mode, and function 3 activates the from VOR mode. Now, function and the back button activates the key lockout feature, and that essentially just locks the buttons, I believe. Now, the number 4 and function activates the deviation mode, or deviation indication mode rather, and function 5 activates the pitch control mode or feature. And again, these are not things you need to worry about. Number 6 is really cool when used with the function button. It displays the battery voltage and the current, as well as the temperature inside the transceiver, which is actually really nice if you're worried about your radio overheating. The 121.5 button we already talked about. There is nothing that it does with the function button. It's just a single function when pressed by itself. Function 7 activates the split mode, which is basically duplex, and that means that you are listening on one frequency and transmitting on another. If you're an amateur radio operator who DXs, you probably know about this. Again, you shouldn't be transmitting though. And the function 8 activates a stopwatch timer, and that could be handy for ID and for basic timing. It's just an extra little feature they put in there. Function 9 allows skipping of channels during the scan. Basically, it's like a lockout. Is basically a split memory write command when used with the F button. MW stands for memory write. So the third function on this is to press and hold the key, and that basically is what writes. By just tapping it, nothing will happen. This is to avoid you overwriting memories accidentally. The function 0 adjusts the squelch threshold, which we already talked about, and the function scan button activates the dual watch feature, and basically when it's not used with the function, it just switches between two VFOs, A and B, so essentially two frequencies that you might be monitoring. And if you're holding the scan button down, basically activates the scanning feature. And then of course the function button is the one with the big F. You toggle it on and off essentially. Push it once to activate function, and again to cancel the function request and go back into normal keyboard mode. So actually it's a pretty straightforward unit. Again, some of the earlier functions I mentioned you don't really need to know unless you're a pilot. And just to provide a little better close-up, basically on the left side you got the antenna jack. We talked about that already. The second thing you see in between the big knobs is a little cover that you can unscrew, and that allows you to connect a microphone or earphone. The CT96 or the MH44 are ones that work with this unit. Just again, be careful if you use them, not to key down. Next to that on the right side, you'll see the volume and the power, and basically you turn it to the right, it turns it on, and you adjust the volume. And the outer knob is actually a dial that has a 20 position rotary switch, which allows selecting frequencies or memory channels. And those are only really used if you are changing frequencies or you have pre-programmed memories. Instead of actually manually entering them, chances are you'll be only listening to one or two frequencies. And let's talk about how to figure out what frequencies to program. But before I get to that, here's a really quick announcement. I am running a raffle, which you can access on w6aer.com/giveaway. And this raffle is currently giving away an audiobook, and this is the first time I'm doing this, so it's a 2-month cycle. Eventually what I want to do is do regular raffles once a month for various things, and mostly digital products, but also some actual physical items. So check back often. Again, w6aer.com/giveaway, and you can enter multiple times. Additionally, if you want to support this channel, please visit amazon.com/shop/MaximumRF. I will leave the link below as well. Anytime you purchase from here, it helps support this channel and as well as the website actually. Also, feel free to visit any of our other affiliates and sponsors. It'd be really appreciated. Starting at the lower end, at the 118 range, you got air traffic control, followed by some other miscellaneous combination of frequencies, if you will, that are used. And this is followed by more air traffic control frequencies, as well as company airline operational control frequencies, which I will talk about it in a little more. The itinerary channel, by the way, basically just means a planned journey or one place to another, essentially just a journey, if you will, or a planned route. And those are all the air-to-air frequencies that are the most common, at least. And of course, here are some common company frequencies. UPS and Federal Express are pretty common, of course, for packages as well as DHL, at least in Europe more so, since it is a German owned company, I believe. Southwest Airlines, American United are also pretty large. Further, you can find information at radioreference.com, which is my go-to site for frequencies that I'm trying to look up or I'm not familiar with. It's actually worth having a membership there. And here's an example of the Hollywood Burbank Airport in the LA area. These are the frequencies that are worth listening to if, for example, you happen to be living in that area. And near me, these are airports in San Mateo County. I am very close to the Half Moon Bay Airport. In fact, that's probably the closest outside of the SFO or the San Francisco International Airport to me. And speaking of which, here's the San Francisco International Airport. And this is just a small section of the several pages of frequencies which you can listen to if you live near San Francisco International Airport, for example, but your local airport is listed here as well. You can always go to my website, which is w6aer.com, and I have a few frequencies listed for things just near me, in this case, the San Carlos Airport. And something else interesting to mention, if you do not have a scanner or one of these radios, the liveatc.net website and actually the app are an incredible resource. I actually have the app from them as well, where you can listen into air traffic control, and this is without requiring any additional hardware, which is pretty neat. On the back side, you'll find the belt clip, which you probably just saw. It came off. You can put it back very easily. Here you got the battery pack, which detaches, and notice that the pins here are a little bit different than they are for the typical amateur line of Yaesu radios. So the dock that they sell for like the I think it's the FTD series, will not work. But the charger adapter or the adapter for the dock works perfectly fine and is the right voltage. So if you need to power these radios, typically that will do the trick. For the record, this is the one I'm using. And this is a Yaesu power adapter. If you ever need replacement parts, and you likely will, the battery pack and the charger and so on, here's the part numbers listed, as well as some of the additional parts that you may or may not need replacements for. The cradle especially is important to pay attention to, as well as the battery pack, as these do vary from the ones that are sold with hand radios. And if the belt clip ever comes off, as it did for me just now, and it will, basically what you do, take this, comes right out, has a little screw in it. This goes in the back of the radio, and it clips right back on. These are not the best design and I've seen these on different Yaesu radios. Essentially, simple Phillips screwdriver will take care of it. There we go, done. And you're back in business. And if you ever get your hands on one of these units, it's a good idea to do a CPU or factory reset. And you do this by just turning off the radio and then pushing or holding down the volume knob and pushing in the monitor button, not the transmit, but the monitor button underneath. And hold those two while turning on the unit, and that should do a factory or a CPU reset. And it's a good idea to do that if you just got this radio. As a reminder, please do not interfere or key down on any frequencies on the airband unless you are permitted to do so. This is not only illegal, but can be dangerous and cause serious harm. Basically, you need to know what you're doing. Listening in on this unit or a scanner radio, and see my other videos for details on this, is perfectly fine in most countries, though please check with your local laws if you're outside the United States, as well as some counties and possibly reservations in the US, as local laws might differ. Thanks for watching, and please check out one of these other related videos. This is Lucas, W6AER, and 7-3 for now.